So I think
murder is worse than yelling.
Yeah, listen.
I think
allegedly stabbing someone to death is worse than
getting legally railroaded is a worse outcome than getting held accountable for using the N-word. It's all about the framing.
No, but Stephen's point is that one is worse than the other.
I don't think we can end this on this, Pierce.
No, my God, Jesus Christ! No one's talking about is saying the N-word worse than stabbing. That's a straw man. Hey, I'm surprised Mark hasn't used that word. Hey, you're creating a straw man. No one never brought up the argument saying the N-word is worse than stabbing somebody to death. Where did that even come from? I truly don't understand why. Why in 2025 do white folks want to say the N-word so bad? You see what I'm saying? Like, these hateful people wanted to be a normal, wanted to be just everyday speech using the most hateful words out there. And it's crazy to me. Like, and what we're going to be watching is, once again, Marc Lamont Hill on Piers Morgan, which we're going to be watching on Marc's YouTube channel, because if I can not give Piers Morgan a view, trust me, I'm going to try to do that. But anyway, once again, he's talking to Steven Crowder. And once again, for some reason, people like Steven Crowder want to try to make excuses on using the N-word and other slurs like that. Like, what is the benefit? And I hear everybody talking about they want to be a free speech absolutist. Why? What is the benefit of people calling black folks the N-word like that racist white lady did to a 5-year-old? What net positive did she do for society doing that? And I'm pretty sure if you're watching this, you're going to say, well, at least we know who she is. At least we know that she is a racist POS. But here's the thing. In 2025, people like that are now getting rewarded to be hateful like that. She's now damn near a millionaire because of her hateful actions and her hateful words. So it's not enough for me to sit here and say, oh, now, people expose themselves of the hateful person that they are, and we can expel them from society somehow. I'm pretty sure at some point she's going to be on Fox News somewhere with her own segment of some sort. People like that get rewarded. Look at January 6th, the insurrectionist. The one stupid white lady who wanted to jump through a window with police officers having their gun drawn at them. Now her family is wealthy, is rich. Do you see what I'm saying? So once again, being a free speech absolutist means absolutely nothing in 2025. And I'm sorry if I sound like this. My allergies, I did the whole nostril thing probably like 30 minutes ago. It hasn't kicked in yet. So if I sound a little funny, I apologize. But let's go ahead and watch Marc Lamont Hill, Piers Morgan, and Steven Crowder, that POS.
Okay. Marc Lamont Hill, welcome back to Uncensored. I saw your reaction.
And first off, you can tell Mark is not happy. I don't know if it's like something he has to do, or maybe like they pay him pretty good. So he's like, you know what? I'm gonna, but he doesn't. Mark, hey, smile, bro. Come on now. Like, you already look upset. I don't know what happened before this or after or during, but he does not look happy. But I understand why.
Reaction in another podcast I think you did, where you were pretty aggrieved at what you thought I was trying to do there. And just to reiterate to you, in the moment, I was trying to expose her cowardice. And I listened to your impassioned immediate response to my challenge, and I immediately realized this would not be a smart thing to do. It certainly wasn't premeditated. It certainly wasn't from anything other than a place of, you are an unashamed racist who says you say this word all the time, including to black people. I bet you don't. And he'll do the same as to be performative. Let's see if I'm right. And, with hindsight, it was a little ill-advised, but it wasn't me trying to be theatrical or get a viral moment, just to reassure you, because...
Hold on, time out. Wait a minute. Let me put some... Okay, check this out. If this was, I don't want to say anyone but Pierce, but maybe like a close friend to Marc or someone that has a pretty good history of being a pretty positive, interviewer, someone in like Pierce's position, okay? Like I don't know, not Mehdi, he wouldn't do nothing stupid like that, but then if with them apologizing, I would kind of understand, like, okay, it was the moment. You said you wanted them to say something stupid to prove a point. I got you. But with Pierce, okay, call me crazy. I don't know if I'm reading too close in between the lines here, but someone like Pierce would do that for a viral moment, would do that for the clicks and the money. Like someone like Pierce, after me watching Pierce for the past, 2 years, it's pretty obvious, at least to me. Like, I don't know, maybe once again, I'm looking a little too hard, but he's doing it for the oohs and the ahs, not because he's trying to, defeat racism and, make a laughery out of these people. No, you're an opportunist, so come on.
You and I go back a long way. I wouldn't want to deliberately put you in that position. And you very quickly responded and made me immediately realize the peril of potentially doing what I was trying to do. But in relation to what Stephen Crowder says, now look, a lot of what Stephen says, I agree with. I do think we've got to a weird place in society where words and language have been ridiculously over-weaponized and used to cancel people and ruin their lives and so on. I agree with that. But I also think there are certain things and words and phrases which have been accepted by society for quite some time now to be completely unacceptable. And one of them is the N-word, particularly when it's used against black people by white people, right? And this woman, the way this Lily Gaddis sort of proudly giggled her way, talking about how proud she is to say it and so on, I found completely repellent and disgusting. But in terms of what Stephen said about, this is heading to a dangerous area if you weaponize words generally, is he right?
In the abstract, sure. I mean, I think if you weaponize a bunch of words and people don't have the safe space to say what they want or say what they believe, it could be a very dangerous space, because what I find to be offensive, you may not. What I find to be extreme, you may find to be moderate. What I may see as outside the proverbial Overton window, you may not. And so you never want to get into a place, to use Stephen's language, where we're just doing the linguistic whack-a-mole. I agree with that wholeheartedly. But I don't think that's what's at issue here. I think there are a few things. You all said a bunch of interesting things that I want to get at. The first thing is, I guess, to Stephen's initial point about my self-emasculation. At the thought, I wasn't melting down, as some on the right have said, because I was afraid that this boogeyman N-word was going to pop out of her mouth and I was going to fall away. That wasn't the point at all. I think you actually characterized it properly, Piers. I was frustrated not at the looming threat of the N-word coming out of her mouth. It was at the spectacle that I felt like in that moment was being created that was wholly unnecessary. And again, I don't think you were doing it intentionally at my expense, but we're all hosts. There's a moment where you got somebody on the ropes, and we know it's a good moment. We know it's a big moment. And getting a white person to say the N-word, it's like A Few Good Men. It's like, did you order, it's a Jack Nicholson moment, right? If you can get them to do that, that's a big moment. And I get that. I guess my point at the time was, it's not the smoking gun that we think. White people don't lie about using the N-word. They lie about not using the N-word. If she already said, I use the N-word in private. So no one pretends to use the N-word when they don't. So I actually didn't think that we needed that confession out of her. For me, as far as the other point here, I don't accept Stephen's analysis here of the donations to the campaign. even if he is right that people were donating out of some political reaction to our hypersensitivity as a society, that's the wrong person to do it to. Do it to the person that's getting doxxed because they made a mistake 10 years ago. Do it to the person who rapped the N-word, on Gold Digger, and suddenly it has lost their ability to go to college. There's all kinds of people who we might say, even if we don't agree fully on the context, who we could say, hey, is a better example of the cause. But as you said, Piers, this is somebody who was using the word in the exact context that we're afraid of, or not afraid of, in the exact context that we're frustrated about, in the exact context that we think it's being used in. And so to dump money, almost $800,000 into her coffers, it ultimately rewards her for using that language. Imagine if an arsonist were to set a building on fire, and all three of us agreed that arson should not get the death penalty. I think we probably all agree on that. But if we were to then take $1 million and dump it in their GoFundMe to fund the arsonist's legal defense, and now they get off, is that the right way to do it? Is that the right call? There might be other ways to do it than to fund.
So before this idiot decides to talk, two things here. One, the first premise that they were talking about, and I'm not sure if Marc has posted, maybe they had a prior discussion, but if we are gradually growing as a community, as a society, as a people, words are going to change meanings. Words are going to, our vocabulary is going to increase. So, and what was okay to say 20 years ago may not be okay to say now. And that all has to boil down, which, we don't have to get into it because that's not their really, focus on this conversation. But it all boils down to decency. Dare I say the D word, decency. If you don't want me to say the F word around you and you might be gay, then I have enough respect for you at the least of you being a human being and saying, okay, you know what? I respect you. I'm not going to say it, at least around you. You see what I'm saying? Like, at least have the decency to just say it within your closed doors. Like Theo Von said, like he says that, if he has the need to say the N word, he'll write it down, which is hilarious stuff. But like, do something like that, but like, it seems like people like Steven Crowder, they want more than that. They want to be able to say it and not face no consequences from our peers, from society. He'd be like, oh, they're going to lose their jobs and this and this. Well, how else do we hold people accountable for the hateful things that they say? And like Marc said, not in the sense of, they're rapping along Kendrick Lamar's song or whatever, or they said something when they were like 10 years old, like Justin Bieber, you know what I'm saying? Like 20 years ago. Okay, we can talk about that. But someone like this lady who purposely said it to say it in a hateful way, that is different. But let's go ahead and listen.
The person who's done
Mr. Crowder has very politely raised his right hand to speak, which I think is a rare example of good manners on this program. So, Stephen, your response.
Well, it's the Canadian in me, and actually, Dr. Hill and I have go a while back on Fox News, and like I said, he's always been a gentleman, and I do accept his. I saw him on a podcast later explaining that he didn't know who the guest was going to be. This is after the fact, and I have a much greater understanding now. I also get it. I will say, great, now do stabbing. And I think I know what the answer is going to be. Can we both, if we want to find common ground here, agree that, yeah, we really find ourselves at a weird point in this country when a bunch of people are giving to a lady who yells the N-word at a 5-year-old, and a bunch of people are giving to someone who is famous for no other reason than allegedly stabbing an innocent person? I know that we'll say it's because innocent until proven guilty, but this is the information that we have on both of these scenarios at this point in time. And what I'm discussing is the prescription moving forward. And one final thing. Here's the point that I was making that you didn't show in that clip too, was saying that it's racist for someone to say they would prefer to live in a predominantly white neighborhood, or they would prefer to live in their neighborhood, which is not black, I believe is what they said. And I don't believe it was necessarily her. I believe there was a man on the panel who said that, but you do. And I'm not going to attribute racism in your heart because only 4% of the population where you're placed in Los Angeles is black. I think we need to stop attributing and imbuing hatred, and I think we need to stop empowering them. But we do find ourselves at a point in this country where neither of these give, send, goes would have blown up if it existed 10 years ago. Why? How'd we get here?
I actually, well, Mark, I'll get you to respond. I have to say, in a way, completely different scenario, but how we got here, I think the same blame can be attached to how we got here to what is going on with the reaction to Joe Biden's health news. I made a point last night on X when that story broke. I was staggered by the instantaneous mockery, abuse, glee, ecstasy, desire for him to die that poured out in response to my tweet revealing this news about him having aggressive advanced stage 4 prostate cancer metastasizing to his bones, which is clearly an incredibly serious situation for a man of his age. And I just made the point, the guy's served his country for 50 years, whatever you think of it, this is the moment just to wish him well, isn't it? The answer was no, and has carried on being no for the next 24 hours in the most stunningly abusive, horrific, ghastly manner, totally inhumane to me. And I think the common theme, Stephen, of the two things is social media. Social media has, I think, inflamed social and racial tensions to a point where people just don't think the normal rules of society apply. They can be as disgusting and inhumane and racist and sexist and whatever they want to be as they like, with no accountability in almost every case. And we've become almost neutralized to that kind of thing. And part of the problem is that when people like you and me, and Mark, I'm sure, launch staunch defenses of the right to free speech, the wrong ears take it as the right to be openly racist and all these other things with no accountability. They misunderstand what free speech actually entails. It doesn't mean you're never going to be held accountable for what you say. When Shiloh Hendricks said that she said the N word, whatever, this was her right to free speech. Yeah, but everybody else has a right to hold you accountable for it. And it's the second part of that equation, which is, I think, important. So, Stephen, your response to my thesis.
Yeah. Yes, I disagree. I think social media is a part of it, but I also don't think that we're dealing with an accountability culture as far as the country. I think we're dealing with a false accountability culture as far as the media and those in the establishment. You have myself, for example, who was demonetized, throttled on YouTube for simply using the term lesbi queer, someone who referred to themselves as a lesbi queer. It was a quote. Then moved over to Rumble, and after the Exodus Diageo, in charge of 80% of the world's advertising, told Rumble that it wasn't enough to demonetize myself, but that they wouldn't spend $1 of advertising on the entire platform, an alternative platform to YouTube, unless I was removed. You've had entire governments try and remove platforms for freedom of speech. This is not the accountability that people in the streets are calling for. What is being called for example, from people in the media, is a lie.
No. Steven Crowder, Mr. Steven Crowder. Crowder, Steven, Mr. Okay, listen. That is the type of accountability that Americans do themselves. Do you not understand that? Whatever happened to you on YouTube and on Rumble, those are people deciding to look at your actions, whether you like it or not. They decided to look at your actions and hold you accountable. Just because you don't like it doesn't mean that you're not being held accountable correctly. The government is not taking you to jail. The government isn't fining you. The government isn't kidnapping you and sending you off to a foreign country that you have no relation to. Hence what Trump is doing. But the citizens, people who own things, just so happen these ad media companies didn't want to support a social media platform that you were going to be on. That's their choice to do that. That's how we hold each other accountable. If a corner store that I live around is frequently calling black people that walk into their stores the N-word, and black people decide to not go to that store and spend their money, what is he gonna do? Cry and say, "Oh, now my store's shutting down and they're not being fair"? No, we're just choosing to not spend our money at your store. That's how we hold each other accountable, Steven. just because you don't like it, or you're at the wrong end of that stick, which you've been fooling around with that opposite end. This is what you get. I'm sorry.
They would rather hear a lie than the truth. And so you have people checking out. For example, someone's afraid to say, could be my black neighbors, but it's anecdotal. I'm not supposed to say the black friend thing. Move to the same neighborhood I have because it's safer and there's a stronger sense of community. But if you want me to lie to you and say, I picked that neighborhood and it just so happens to be more mixed or more white, but my neighbor's a former Dallas Cowboy, you can demand a lie, but the media is demanding the lie, not the American people. I am in no way concerned going down to a black neighborhood, because I do it, to the tune of hours, hundreds of hours of footage and hundreds of millions of views discussing these issues. The challenge I run into is when someone else, a third party, wants to play a game of telephone and tell them that it's racist. You can go and watch. I had not one, not two, but 10 people in this installment say, yeah, I think all lives matter. I think anyone who says that's white supremacy is out of their mind. They don't speak for us, the black community. I'd never know that unless I had that conversation with them. Very few people are doing it. You're demanding a lie of people.
Okay, before Mark answers, and he's going to break it down like a fraction, one black person, 10 black people don't speak for all black folks. And vice versa. If Marc Lamont Hill has an issue with, people saying all lives matter, other black people can have different opinions. That's not crazy to think. So what you just said proves nothing. Just because you found 10 black people that has no problem with, the slogan, all lives matter, doesn't negate the 10 black people that do have a problem with it, that do believe that it is racist to say all lives matter. Because if you dig a little deeper, get into the science of it, get into the history of it, you might think differently. But not all people are on the same level when it comes to, this political trash that we got to deal with. So once again, that means nothing. What are you talking about? Go ahead, Mark. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, Mark, your response.
Lots of things. Again, first, I think Stephen is, and I don't assign to you any ill intent, but you're comparing apples and oranges here when we talk about the Carmelo Anthony and the racist woman, I can't think of her name, video.
Lily Gaddis.
I think, as you pointed out,
Shiloh
all day,
Hendricks.
not Lily Gaddis, but
you're talking about Shiloh Hendricks. Yeah.
Shiloh Hendricks. Yes. When you talk about context, I think we have to look at context in the context even of these GoFundMes, right? The people who are funding Carmelo Anthony, you can tell this from the comments, this isn't my guess, they're not saying good job. They're saying we don't believe that you're guilty. We don't believe that you've gotten a fair legal process. And so we're sending money to make sure that you get a proper legal defense because we don't believe that you are guilty of this crime. That is what they're saying. Now, you and I may look at the evidence and come to the same conclusion or a different conclusion, but they're not attempting to reward the behavior. They're attempting to challenge a system that they feel like is misrepresenting the behavior. In the case of the N-word and this woman, right, Charlotte, what's happening is quite different. They're not saying, hey, we feel like she's taken such a loss from her free exercise of free speech that we want to reimburse her for that. That would be a different argument. I still wouldn't want to do it, but that would at least be logically and morally consistent. When you look in the comments and when you talk to people who are funding that campaign, they are literally shouting the N-word. They are literally echoing the racial epithet, and that is different. That's why I say if this is really going to be a First Amendment cause, again, and not the lie that you're talking about, then let's invest in actual First Amendment causes and not this. And to your second point, I agree, and then I got you wholeheartedly. I mean, there's absolutely nothing wrong with making decisions about where you want to live. But there's a huge difference between saying, I want to live in a statistically safe neighborhood, or I want to live in a historically safe neighborhood, and I don't want to live around black people under any circumstances. And again, the latter is what came out in our conversation on the show the last time. And we're melding those two things as if they are the same, and then acting as if there's just no room for a white person, or a black person for that matter, to exercise any radical honesty about where they want to live. I ain't met a person yet that doesn't want to live in a safe neighborhood. I want to live in a safe neighborhood. I also want to live around black people. People can make their own choices, but let's not pretend they're the same thing.
Okay.
So now, just before they move on, and I hate when people do this, Mark just broke that down beautifully. Like, if you took the time to listen, understand, comprehend what he said, you will understand he's making two distinctions between the two cases. Okay, the Carmelo Anthony case, people want to support his legal funding because unfortunately, if you're broke, if you don't have no money, you may not be fully represented properly or at the best. And this is dealing with someone's life being behind bars if it is a self-defense case. But then you have someone who chose to use a hateful word to a kid and was caught on camera. Those are two totally like out of this world scenarios. So how are these two idiots going to conflate the two and be like, yeah, you know, they're really the same thing? That drives me crazy. And yes, these idiots are going to do that. And to answer, you know, the second portion, there's black neighborhoods that are safe too. There's white neighborhoods that are not safe also. So once again, it's white supremacy talking points if you say black neighborhoods are unsafe and white neighborhoods are safer. That's racist. Because I live in a black neighborhood and I ain't never been robbed. I ain't never been shot at. I ain't never been, you know, abducted or held at. No. So once again, it's like talking to idiots is stressful. But let's go ahead and just hear these two idiots. Hear what Marc just said, like in 2 minutes. He laid it out. And they're just going to completely ignore everything.
We've got to end it there. Yeah. I would say, in answer to your question, Stephen, I would say in both the GoFundMe cases, I think it's wrong. I think the
stabbing is worse than a word.
I think the intentions on both sides are actually malevolent and wrong. They're not doing it out of any great sense of social justice or anything. They're doing it because they're taking a side based on skin color in both those stories, I think. So I think
murder is worse than yelling.
Yeah, listen.
I think.
You know, allegedly stabbing someone to death is worse than
getting legally railroaded is a worse outcome than getting held accountable for using the N-word.
Yeah, but it's all about the framing. No, but Stephen's point is that one is worse than the other.
I don't think we can end this on this, Pierce. I can.
No, my God, Jesus Christ! No one's talking about is saying the N-word worse than stabbing. That's a straw man. Hey, I'm surprised Marc hasn't used that word. Hey, you're creating a straw man. No one never brought up the argument saying the N-word is worse than stabbing somebody to death. Where did that even come from? We're talking about the outcomes and the way that people are trying to donate and support these individuals. That's what we're talking about. Why? Why are people either they're so stupid that they can't comprehend the situation or how Marc is presenting his argument, or they're being disingenuous and they're being liars because they know they have nothing. They have no talking points to support their stupidity. Yelling is not worse than stabbing. No shit, Sherlock. Dude, do you want a graham cracker for that? You dumb idiot. No one's talking about that. But once again, this is why I hate this is why I hate politics, because we're dealing with a bunch of idiots here. But I digress. Go ahead.
Take 30 seconds here. If we're talking about accountability, but we're pretending. So are you against catch and release?
That framing suggests that the money is going for the behavior.
Are you against the discount under $1,000 or less, where a shopkeeper has to close down because of the name of systemic restorative justice? Are you against cash and release? Are you against cash bail? Are you against the idea that people can shoplift and not be held accountable for their actions? Let's talk real accountability for actions and not false accountability for words. I believe that stabbing someone is worse than saying a word, Both are bad. Me, Mr. Traditional.
You know what?
Okay.
Let
me respond to that. Let me respond to that.
Quickly.
Because again, that is a disingenuous framing. No one is arguing that stabbing someone is better than using the word. My point is our response as a community to the stabbing is not to say, great job. Our response is, this was awful, but let's find out what really happened. No one is saying on the other side of this issue that N-word thing is awful, but let's hold this woman accountable, but let's not go too far. And if they are, I'm okay with that. But it's not apples and oranges. No one is saying what that woman did is worse than that kid getting stabbed. They're saying that the story of the stabbing hasn't been told well or properly, and we want justice for everybody. And
Gentlemen,
to answer your cash bail, yes, I'm against cash bail. But I don't believe I don't believe that's the only way to hold people accountable. You can hold people accountable without cash bail.
I've got to leave it there, not least, Mark, because I'm worried about what you...
All right, and then he's just going to talk about his earpiece there. But once again, when you're talking to people like Steven Crowder, you have to talk at them. You can't talk with them. You can't expect them to have a reasonable back and forth exchange in good faith. Because as you see, now he start moving the goalposts. Well, catch and release, cash bail, catch and release. No, we're talking about someone saying the N-word that we all pretty much agree is a hateful slur and should be publicly held accountable. So if she loses her job, that sucks for you. If, people are now talking behind your back, they don't want to be your friend, whatever the case is, you kind of brought that to yourself. Okay, you can't be taken care of if you are bringing problems to yourself. Fair enough. But once again, the whole point is people made her rich because they support that hateful rhetoric. They support racist people like her. They support trying to demonize non-white people. People like Steven Crowder want to be able to say the F word and not be held accountable by his peers. So once again, when they're being disingenuous and trying to conflate the two situations, is they're trying to normalize hate speech. And they're trying to hide it behind, free speech, absolutist. We should be able to say whatever we want and be held accountable. But to the way that you like it, right? Because unfortunately, a lot of people on the right side, they F around and find out. And they don't like that. So, hey guys, thank you for watching. If you made it this far, this is a 34-something minute video. I appreciate you. If you made it this far, let me know in the comments. I want to say thank you to you. But once again, if you guys agree or disagree with anything I said in this video, let me know in the comments down below or hit that blue sky link in the description down below so me and you can have that one-on-one talk. And like always, let's have that conversation.
Forever. I've been in the field with whatever they throw at me, brush it off, pick myself up, moving on to the better. Hey. Ain't no errors, baby, it's a new era. I wake up early, feeling rich like I'm Kesha. I get to the paper, boy. Extra. Fuck with me, you know that I got it. Come with me, let's take a trip to the islands. We up on the jet, we'll do more than just